Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Maddie McDonough. I'm the Executive Director of the Summit County Housing Authority. The Housing Authority was established in spring of last year with the first meeting of our board in June of 2025, so we're not yet a year old. Much like the tiny human, I now have a human of infancy.
Good.
The Housing Authority is comprised of 7 dedicated board members. That includes 3 county council members and 4 members of the public who are appointed by the county council. We meet once per month at the Sheldon Richens building, our next meeting being Wednesday, March 18th at 10 a.m. All of those meetings are open to the public, so you're more than welcome to come in person or join us online via Zoom. Before we get started in earnest this evening, I'd like to thank our partners for being here and providing such invaluable service for our communities. I also like to thank Ammon Tier in the back for spearheading this initiative. He's with the Summit County. You're joining us tonight for the first in a 4-part series that focuses on the relationship between housing and other top community priorities. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on the intersection between housing and transportation. Our event is going to be moderated by Joan Meixner, one of the board members of the Housing Authority. And the panel is comprised of experts in the field of transportation and housing. We'll sort of wrap up our panel discussion with a Q&A period, starting with questions that were submitted ahead of time, and then moving to questions submitted by all of you real time. We do have note cards in the back if you'd like to jot down a question for our panelists. If you do happen to have any questions this evening that our panel is not able to answer, please feel free to reach out to Housing Authority at summitcountyutah.gov, and we'll get back to you. I'm going to turn it now to Joan to set the stage, but thank you again for being here and wanting to learn more about housing and transportation. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to introduce and then I'm going to do mine. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today. Again, thank you all for coming. And also thank you again to Ammon. He's been really terrific at helping us get many things set up in the communications of our education and advocacy program, part of the Housing Authority. Our presenters today, I'm going to go from all the way to your left to my right. Shellie Barrus is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity for Summit and Wasatch counties. She has more than 20 years of experience in affordable housing development. She brings a passion for people, sustainability, and economic stability. In her work with Habitat, she leads a local chapter of the global nonprofit dedicated to eliminating substandard housing through constructing and rehabilitating homes, advocating for fair and just housing policies, and providing training and access to resources to help families improve their long-term stability. In her free time, she enjoys having fun adventures with all the littles in her family. Jason Glidden joined Mountainlands in 2024 as Executive Director. Before Mountainlands, Jason worked for Park City Municipal as Housing Development Manager, leading Park City's affordable housing program and helping to deliver hundreds of affordable units through the creation of new policies and land management codes. At Mountainlands, he directs the nonprofit in its work to acquire and construct affordable housing, assist in securing housing and basic need services, providing education and also to advocate for housing policy. When not working to provide more housing opportunities in the Wasatch Back, Jason enjoys being outdoor skiing, mountain biking, fly fishing with his wife and 2 kids. And last but not least, Carl Miller is the Transportation Planning Director for Summit County. He's been working in transportation and community planning for over 2 decades and began his tenure in Summit County in 2022. Fun fact, Carl is the only person in the nation to receive the American Planning Association's Advanced Transportation Planning Certificate and the Project Management Certificate. In his free time, he likes to travel with his family. However, he has learned that his 3 teenagers hate looking at roads and transit systems at work. So anyway, well, welcome and thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I just wanted to set the table in terms of because I know this panel is called Housing and Transportation. I know people associate growth with traffic. And so I just wanted to set the table talking a little bit about how our county has changed in the last 20 plus years using 2002, the Olympics year, as our base and going to 2023, so 21 years. And so in that time, our population has increased by 36%. The employment has almost over doubled to 32,000 employees in Summit County. But the biggest thing here that's happened is our inbound commuters, which I think is like 56%, of our employment in 2002, has grown to over 65%, but that's a 140% increase. So I love the little graphic that Ammon puts at the bottom here, where it basically says when the Olympics were here, we had 2 resident vehicles, simplification to 1 commuter. Now we're at for every 2 resident vehicles, we have 1.5 commuters. So it's a big growth in cars. I think from my perspective, as someone who's lived in Summit County for 9 years, I always use the anecdote that when I first moved here, I would never get on the highway during Sundance and on powder days. Mm-hmm. Now I never get on the highway. And if I accidentally do, then I have to pass 40. I have to go all the way to Tollgate to turn around before. So I just the 9 years I've lived here, the population has grown. And with that, I'd like to just say that I think if we had more housing here, we'd have maybe less cars. So with that, we're going to go through 6 myths today. Shellie is the first one, and you can get started.
Yeah. So our first myth is living further out saves money. So I think really the things we're looking at is if you live out in outer line areas or bedroom communities, it definitely can have lower rents or lower mortgages. I don't think that necessarily happens here now any longer. There may be some, but I still think we have a lot of struggle with affordability no matter how far away you are. But if you're coming in from outside the county to work here, that's probably why, right? You can afford rents or mortgage payment in those communities, and it's tougher to be near where you work. So I think that the thing about that lower cost and how it's breaking this myth is that you have to add that transportation cost into it, right? So really that can consume up to 25% of a household income. And it's a lot of money when you start adding that in, and it can probably be higher because I start talking to a lot of people in the community who commute in, and they're coming from a lot farther distances, right? We've talked about this a lot. We're getting people from Wyoming, both of the feeder canyons, but I think we're hearing a lot about Davis, Weber County people. A lot of people are commuting in for different jobs. So I think it also kind of sometimes ties to kind of that for us, the cost in our community, if those outlying areas are single family, kind of strict zoning for single family, which a lot of the communities are, right? It's really about single family homes and then especially now bigger lot sizes and bigger homes. So it does make affordability also a struggle. That's it. It's really that auto dependence and maintenance costs that are causing the additional costs. So in affordable housing, we always kind of look at 30%. You shouldn't be spending more than 30% of your income for your total housing cost, right? That's what we struggle all the time to try to make happen as we're providing affordable housing. And so if you're adding that additional transportation costs on, that really the sweet spot there is you shouldn't be spending more than 45% of your income on those combined costs. And we're already seeing that it's really 25%, and hardly anybody, unless they're in some kind of deed restricted or current affordable housing, is actually paying 30% of their income. So that it does not necessarily make it more affordable to live further away from where you're working.
Okay.
And that's it.
I think this is mine.
Yes, it is.
Affordable housing, the myth. Affordable housing causes sprawl. Where the reality is sprawl is primarily driven through restrictive zoning and restrictive land use. When you think about things like lot sizes, and when you're restricting, there's restrictions on minimum lot sizes. So how small can a lot be? You think of parking requirements, height requirements, things that really prevent, density. And I know that tends to be a bad word around here, but density, when you restrict that, you're forcing, more development to get pushed further out. as long as you are not as restrictive and you can shrink these requirements such as minimum lot and increase height, then you allow for more building to take place closer to job centers. So it's really important that, you know, we look at those things when thinking about zoning. I know, you know, Shellie just mentioned it. Other restrictions such as, you know, restricting multifamily in certain areas. There's a lot of zoning in both Park City and Summit County that don't allow for multifamily. So we need to kind of rethink that, I think, and look at how we can make changes to zoning to really push more development towards our job centers rather than away from it. So I don't think it's necessarily affordable housing doesn't cause the sprawl. I think sprawl is caused by, you know, the zoning that's in place. So I think affordable housing actually is the opposite. When we look at development of affordable housing, we're looking for that density, right? It's the only way that it makes sense to keep it affordable. Sprawl is going to be more land, which is going to be more expensive. Single family is harder to develop. It's much easier to develop more multifamily than single family, less expensive, I should say, which increases that affordability. So sprawl is not caused by affordable housing, but rather zoning.
So my myth is that transit only works in big cities. And I think it was like Shellie pointed out that if we look at housing plus transportation together, obviously if we can provide transit, then we don't have to have those capital costs to buy a vehicle, to store the vehicle in parking, to pay gas, which is only going up in price, and all those other expenses. So if we can combine those two, but maybe it only works in big cities. You think of transit, you think New York City, you think of Chicago at the L. Can it really work in a small community? I'd say anecdotally, I went on 2 vacations in the last 12 months. One was to a small mountain resort town, similar to Park City. And I went on 4 different modes of travel, not including the single occupant vehicle. We got around everywhere we wanted to. And quite conveniently, because that's what they invested in. Last week, I went to a much larger city, in fact, the second largest city in the United States. I won't say which one. I don't want to shame them in front of all of you. And to get to the airport to where we were going, 13 miles away, would have taken us an hour and a half on the best transit route that they had. And so, of course, we didn't take it. We don't have an hour and a half to waste when we're on vacation. And so, of course, we piled into a vehicle and we drove there. And so just based on that, it's really not the size of the community. It's really about the land use patterns. And obviously, vehicles work well because they take you exactly where you are to exactly where you're going. But transit works really well when there's very defined places of origin and places of destination. And we have that in our community. We have very key locations where we want to get to, whether that's Old Town, the resorts, or other key destinations. And we have a transit system that can serve that. And that doesn't have to necessarily be bus. It could be microtransit. It can be bus rapid transit, shuttles. There's a variety of different ways we can get there. But the size of the community is really no correlation to how well a transit system works. Shortly after I started here, I was talking to Caroline, and she mentioned, executive director at High Valley Transit, she mentioned that in 2 years, they had provided 2 million rides. Beth can back me up if that's wrong, but yeah, okay, I'm getting thumbs up. I'm not making up numbers. That's crazy. That's an incredible amount of rides for a community this size. We have a great transit system here, and I would say that there is no difference between, there is a difference, but it's the way you serve the community, not that small communities can't have transit.
So, Carl, I am very interested in the 4 ways that you in that resort town, like I'm like,
okay.
Okay, so you gotta tell us.
All right.
Were you on a bike? I'm just like,
No.
take an e-bike? Okay,
No bike.
really-
Wish they had bike share there.
Yeah.
Bike share programs are the best, in case you're wondering. We took the heavy rail in from our park and ride.
Okay.
So heavy rail, and then we got on a gondola, and then at the top of the mountain, we took these. Well, I guess we did. It were 3-wheel bikes down the mountain, and then we walked back to the train station. So 4 different modes in a city half the size of Park City.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was in Zermatt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, that is not in the U.S.
We really do need these 3-wheel bikes, though. They were very fun. If you want people to get out of vehicles, buy everybody a 3-wheel
I
bike,
was like,
and they will never want to get in their car again. They're too much fun.
I was just like, that did not happen in Berkeley. So I just really wanted to know like how you were
Yeah.
getting around. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, you were next.
Awesome. So my myth is bringing workers from distant communities is sustainable. So I mean, I'm going to focus on kind of really one area is about kind of from an employer perspective or employment perspective, right? So there can be a lot of additional costs just directly to the commuter, right? There's those kinds of things that they're looking at, but it can for the employer be have a retention and productivity gap, right? Higher levels of burnout and turnover happen, and I know it. I am a commuter. And my staff are commuters, and it like those days that are tough, and it affects your employee base, right? It affects their energy and how the day starts out, and just the time they're spending. Long commutes are linked to stress, and it is true. You're on the road with a lot of other people, and it doesn't matter how many lanes we add on, you're still on the road with that many people, and the way you have to deal with it. And so it does lead to kind of lower job satisfaction, productivity and the employees. So that's their kind of lifestyle and their happiness. But the employer loses out on that when you're having to manage that. Employees that are near where they work come to work less stressed, less fatigue, like a little more ready to go and productive. That can be an outcome for that. And then there are, we've talked about this a lot, but can be regional economic losses, right? So everybody who's commuting in commutes out and goes home, and they're not necessarily spending dollars in the community. So you're not getting some sales tax revenue. And then honestly, the thing that for me, I really see is that you can observe in affordable housing that one of the most impactful issues we observe in affordable housing is the impact of time costs, where workers spend hours commuting rather than working, resting, caregiving, or spending quality time with their family. And I was tell you just a quick conversation that I've had in the last year, this ongoing conversation with one of our homeowners who moved into her house a year and a half ago. As she was going through the program and applying, she works for a local resort hotel and had been there for many years with them and was commuting from Utah County. She has 2 toddlers that she was bringing up to the community with her to go to daycare, so she wasn't leaving them in a place that she could be stranded from them. And so she spent that time, had to make sure she had food, had to make sure she had dinner, had to make sure she always had in her vehicle ways to entertain those kids. And if you haven't been in a car with toddlers, sometimes they're kind of lose their minds, and she had to have and they're in car seats, and there's just nothing you can do. You are driving and they are in car seats, and life can be kind of chaotic. And you don't get to have these lovely stress-free conversations, right? It's not joyful. It's dark going down the canyon, and it can be snowy, and it can be crashes and all those things. And we talked about it several times because she then still had to do her sweat equity hours with us on top of that, right? So how do we make this happen, and how do we work with her? She had to have a little potty chair in her car, because sometimes if you were trapped in the canyon, I don't know what you do with little kids. You manage it. So we talked about that a lot, and really working with her in doing her sweat equity. And then she's been in her home, and I just talked to her a couple months ago, and I'm like, what are you doing with all your free time? Right? What's happening? and I was just kidding her. She's like, because she still has these 2 little kids, right? Single mom. And she said, wow, dinner time is so delightful. We make dinner together. The kids are sitting up at the counter, and they're reading or doing their homework, and we talk, and they're involved with making dinner. And we actually eat dinner with plates, and we sit at a table, and we do all these things, and we get connected in our community. We do lots of outdoor activities in our community in Silver Creek Village, and we love it. And she said, and oh yeah, like I'd love to bake. I've always been a baker, and I'm teaching my girls how to bake and we spend time. So that quality time, that piece that people get back when they can live near where they work and create community is real. And I, did not prompt her about that. We were having a conversation. What are you doing? Right. And she's so it is a difference. It is about wellness, and what we do for children as well.
Yeah. I would just add to that just a little bit. I'm working with a local company right now that reached out to us to help them survey their employees. This is a company of over 300 employees locally. And the survey came back, and I met with them today, actually, and shared some of the survey results, and they were shocked. 1 in 3 employees has considered leaving in the last year because of commute and or housing costs. They said that's 100 employees. And they said, we couldn't imagine losing 100 employees, what that would do to us. So it's a very real, it's very real.
And also, how happy are they? How productive are they? Could they be these, amazing, better people if they could have that kind of time back? So
yeah, absolutely. All right. Parking requirements don't affect housing costs. This one's pretty easy, but I think I'll give it a shot anyways. They absolutely affect parking costs. Parking can be one of the leading drivers of whether or not a project is financially feasible or not. I think if you look at what some of the requirements are within Summit County, it's like let's say an average of 1.5 parking spots per unit, depending on the size of the unit. It varies, right? It's a ratio. But if we take the average of like 1.5 and say we're doing 100 units, right? That's 150 parking spots. In places like, Park City and Summit County where land is expensive, most of the time you don't have a lot of room for surface lot parking, which is your cheapest parking, right? It's $5,000 to $10,000. So that's going to force you to do either podium or to do underground. Podium parking starts at 25,000 probably up to maybe 60. And then if you have to go underground, hoping that 60 is probably their starting point. And if you're going to hit any soils, contaminated soils like in Park City, it could jump up to over $100,000 a parking spot. So you start doing the simple math. This could add about, anywhere from probably like $4 million to $10 or $11 million to a project. And when you're trying to build affordable housing, that is a huge hit to that project, right? And it really takes down, because really how affordable housing works is that, you have costs, the project cost, and you need to drive the revenue or the rent that will cover that cost of debt. So if you have the ability to bring down those costs through parking reductions or additional density, and you'll be able to bring down rent as well, because you don't need as much rent revenue to cover the debt costs that are associated with the project. So parking is a huge cost for affordable housing.
So Jason, when you are doing like a big multifamily apartment building or something, and you're going after funding for it, right? They're also looking at what's the cost of that project, right? So when you have to add those kind of costs, you're less competitive, right?
Yes.
To get that funding.
So, we utilize low-income tax credits, which is a federal program. And it's run through the state of Utah. Each state has their own organization that runs it. Utah Housing Corporation is the one here in the state of Utah. And you get scored when you submit an application. And part of your score is your what they call credit efficiency. So how effective are you at using the credits or the cost or the money you're getting from them per unit? And when you have high parking costs or high construction costs, which unfortunately in this area we have high construction costs, but that makes your application less attractive, and you actually don't score as well. So, one of the projects we've been working on, we've applied for 3 years in a row and not received funding, mostly because of low cost efficiency scores because of underground parking.
Okay, this is mine. Widening roads will make traffic better. This is probably the most egregious myth, because it actually is true, but only for a few years. So the fact is that if you have a road that's at capacity or congested, you can add lanes to it, and it will solve the problem for a little while. And people will think, oh, it worked, that was a good use of our money and resources to do that. And
I-15 was so great for a minute. Right?
for literally a minute, right? Yeah. And then you'll be back to that situation you were in just a few years ago. But because it worked for a minute, people go, let's do that again. So in the late 90s, I lived in Katy, Texas. It's a medium-sized community west of Houston. And the commute at that time to get to downtown Houston was about an hour. And so at the time, there was 13 lanes on the Katy Expressway, or the Energy Corridor, as they called it, 13 lanes. And so, but it was an hour to get to downtown. And so people said,
Is this a picture of a Katy Expressway?
Yeah, this is not AI, by the way. This is a real picture. I did not manipulate this in any way. The Houston region said, well, an hour that's too long for people to get to downtown Houston. Let's widen the freeway. And so they did, and they did, and they did. We're at now 26 lanes. 26 lanes. And it cost them over $3 billion. And now it doesn't take an hour to get to Houston. It takes about 59 minutes. So you do save time cost, right? A minute or two, but at the expense of $3 billion. That was $3 billion and 13 additional lanes. And the reason for this is it works at first, and then developers and people purchasing houses will look at, especially when it fixes the solution for a year or two, and they'll market it and say, now it's only 35 minutes to Houston. And you look at your time cost and you go, 35 minutes to Houston, that's not that bad. I can do that. I'll move out there.
Further, right?
And then everybody moves out there, and you get in this reoccurring problem where you think, okay, we now have a problem. Let's add lanes. Now more people move out there. And so, for $3 billion, I think we could build 26 lanes and make everybody unhappy. So that, in my opinion, is the worst myth of all, because it does appear to be true.
That is definitely some stress and anxiety
Yeah.
every day. I can't imagine that.
And what if you live on this side and you want to meet your neighbor on the other side? You walk.
Right. What if an accident? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Accident happens.
Great. It's a raised highway too.
I'm assuming they made a comparison against rail costs.
Yeah, I think they did. Houston.
They're Texas.
Yeah, it's Texas. And so, yes, I mean, politically, legislatively,
Right.
roads win out almost every time there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so there's you can add, if anyone's done it yet, you can click on the link here, or Emma's got cards if you want
have
to
a question in mind, I can bring this over to you.
fill them out. People did submit questions in advance, so we're going to start with those three. And the first one is, with the Wasatch back, expecting continued growth and major regional events like the 2034 Olympics, how should communities evaluate long-term transportation options such as regional rail, corridor preservation when planning future housing and workforce development? That's a mouthful. So if anyone want to...
We should have gone back 20 years and made some different decisions, perhaps.
I think that the 2034 Olympics provides us a great opportunity to address some of our worst issues, or most pressing issues, I should say, such as housing and transportation. I think that I would love to see more pressure put on to the organizing committee to get behind some additional projects. I love what they're doing as far as, hey, we're using existing, venues and everything like that. We're trying to get this very low cost. At the same time, there's opportunities for us to get federal funds that will address some of our transportation problems that we're seeing to help improve that. In what way, I'm not sure. As far as long term, this is why we have people like him to tell us what's the best transportation way to do it. And then look at the needs of the games, especially in this area. Rhoda and I always joked, you look at places like Whistler, that hosted the games, 2010, 2009. In Whistler, they created 2,500 units of affordable housing, because what they did was they created the units for the games, for officials, and there was some athlete housing. Now, granted, Whistler's a long way from Vancouver, so there was a need for more housing there. I know with the games here in Salt Lake, a lot of the athletes will be staying in Salt Lake, but there's still a need for, officials and, sponsor housing, whatever there that need a long-term housing. I say long-term for a couple months.
The logistics of the Olympics.
Yeah. Volunteers, those type of people that we should be looking at. How can we create some housing that'll help to support the games, but afterwards can be converted into affordable housing after that. So I think there's opportunity there. And I think we just need to kind of talk more with some of the organizers and kind of figure out how we can make that work. I know they're open to it, and but we just got to figure out how to do it.
Well, won't the Olympics be like a 2-month, 3-month long dance?
Good question. I mean, I think,
Because I mean, like that's what
if not bigger, right?
that's I mean.
So it'll be interesting. We had a great, representation that went over to Italy this year and saw a lot of the goods and bads. You're right there, right? So, and they came back, I'm sure, with a whole list full of things that they want to work on, right? So, I'm excited to hear what they have to say, but I really hope that we take advantage of the games and really work to address some of the long-term issues that we see from in this area.
Our next question is, what should be considered when planning for both housing and transportation for our senior community?
I would say oftentimes we'll just default to, transportation for that everybody is comfortable with and think that everybody will drive. There's groups, both for the senior community as well as others, that have no interest in driving. And that's okay. And if we're only providing one option, then we're really not providing a transportation system that serves the community well. And so I think we need to look at things in a multimodal perspective, and think of transit in a lot of different ways. It can be shuttles, it could be bus rapid transit, fixed route service, or other ways. But I think defaulting to what the most common person does is not a system that's going to serve the community at large.
I think on the housing side, we always think of housing and the housing cycle, and the way I describe that is, most people start by renting and then they get into a starter home and then they maybe move into a larger home as they have a family. And, as you age, you kind of go back towards that rental, right? And I think that what we're missing here is an opportunity for seniors to downsize. There's not a lot of great opportunities in this area for them to downsize. A lot of the housing that's developed is not designed correctly, I think, for senior living. I think dealing with a mom that's aging right now and having to modify her current place where she lives to make sure that she can stay in that area. So and it can be done, I think, things like ADUs, external ADUs is a great way that you can allow people that, maybe have existing homes to build an ADU, which they can downsize to and maybe open up that home for somebody else, another family to come live in. So I think there's solutions out there, but it's completing that housing cycle. We focus so much on that starter home and we're not thinking about the other side of it is when they're out of that and they need something smaller to move into.
Right.
Well, Jason, that reminds me that our code, our building codes, and our zoning, and are prohibited for some of the really creative ideas, like ADUs, exterior ADUs. So that's another thing. Our planning departments, our land management code, all need a hard scrub to be able to do things like that well.
Jason, why do you think? Why do you think no one's built senior housing on the Wasatch Back? I know there was an assisted living facility that closed in Summit County because we had looked at them for my father-in-law. Like, why do you think there's a lot of money here? Not necessarily all the people. I'm just curious if you and Shellie have any thoughts of why.
I'm happy to kind of answer that. I think there's the possibility for condos, like you're talking about a lot of different levels of income and desire for services and stuff. And I think you want to have things where people can do that include those kind of services, maybe in that building, right? Because you do want to do more things. You want to stay around. You want to have the ability to maybe have your family come visit you, those kind of things. So I think, but here's the problem where we're at. The kind of density thing and the height thing makes those kind of projects a little bit harder to fit in to think, because in order to make it pencil, you got to have enough units. Like what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. I mean, senior housing with services is expensive.
No, I
right?
know. Yeah.
Yeah, but, obviously because you've looked into it, I'm sure. And, I think one of the assumptions is that, Park City is full of rich people. Well, most of the aging population here has been here for a long time. And it's not that they have, investment richness. It's that they're property rich, right? And they're still on a fixed income, that doesn't go very far, I don't think, or enough to pay for some of these types of what would needed to be charged to cover the cost to create these
But
centers.
I'm just even talking about so for example, when I looked for my house, I wanted a house that I could grow old in. But every house I looked at I walk up 2 steps and then there's a step down in my house, and there is no I don't have a master bedroom on the first floor. Things like we build our houses not to age in. We build our houses for a fully able family who can walk up and down the stairs. But even the condos in Park City, a lot of them don't have elevators. If you're not on the first floor, it's a 3 floor, So I just, it's something that I think, like you said, the codes, because, if you had a 3-story building and you could be on the 3rd floor, you could take an elevator down most days. That's more doable than.
I think a lot of times when people design, they design for the common person. I don't know how to describe it, right? They're not necessarily thinking about seniors when they do that design. They're not thinking about folks that have disabilities. ADA access around here is not the greatest either, right? So, and geography doesn't play well with that either, right? So we have to adjust to it a little bit, but we should be looking at, as we do designs, that we keep those kind of filters in mind.
Joan, can I mention that the city of Park City, and this study is old at this point, did a study, and we have consulted with specialized investment firms who invest in not affordable but senior properties. Yeah, they did an extensive study that showed if we built something like what was tried out in the Jeremy Ranch area, if we built something, the only way to fill it is to draw from the valley. We don't have enough population in the right age group of the right ilk in our community to fill a facility. We'd have to draw from the valley.
Yeah, because you can't add that additional services, right? Like where you can move into. They weren't looking at that. They weren't looking at including I
don't actually know what this study looked at, but I just know that their conclusion was to fill the facility, people would have to come up from the valley.
Okay.
I think that the county's been doing a lot of great work in trying to resolve this and fix this, in Post Park City, is trying to find alternatives. We're also a very active community. So, I think that you're what would be considered an aging population is much more mobile and independent than maybe in other places where they may not need as many services. Eventually they will, right? So I think maybe that plays into it a little bit with the demand too, is that, I think, the results show that we're aging and it's going like this, right, Jeff? As far as the average age that lives here, but I think they're very much capable of independent living right now.
No. Yeah, we're talking about homes that you can age in.
Yes.
Not necessarily true assisted living.
Okay.
Not nursing. But I know what you're saying though, but because Heber has assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Their population is twice ours.
Same.
It's
very close.
So, but right by the hospital, they have a beautiful assisted living thing.
But and they've created these town duplexes, that are designed for 55 plus, which are very much single level and designed for that, right?
Something to think about.
Yeah.
I think so.
By the same token, in Heber, I live in Heber, and we've now been deemed by the state as a resort community, so our taxes went up. So. If people are on fixed incomes, how do they survive that? It just doesn't make any sense.
I think that's why ADUs, actually accessory dwelling units, are such a great thing too, because they can be a form of income that can help cover those, hopefully.
Well, you got, I don't know,
For
enough
me.
new building to accommodate something like 20,000 new residents. Okay, well, you got brand new taxable properties right there. So you don't need to, why the state came up with charging us additional monies, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. And the last question, if you were king or queen for the day, What would you do to improve housing and or transportation?
Ooh, I have a pitch. This is to make me king for the day. Location efficient mortgages. So like normally when you buy a house, you go to the bank and they'll say, based on the amount that you make, we'll give you % of that for your mortgage. So if, for easy math, you make 10,000 a month, they'll let you get a mortgage up to 4,000 a month. Okay. But they don't care where that house is. They just say that's the cap of your housing expenses. That's your limit. But if you're living next to a transit line or if you can walk to work, then you're not doing that housing and transportation costs. You just have housing costs. And so Seattle and I think Chicago had location efficient mortgages in the mid 2000s. And they started to roll these out, and people would actually live closer to where they worked, or they would live close to a transit line, and they would get a higher amount. They could go up to, I think, 50% of their overall net paycheck.
Yep.
What am I going for? Income. Net income to pay for a larger house, because housing near transit is going to have a higher premium to it too. But you can offset that and say, well, I'm not going to pay for a car. I'm not going to have on a vehicle. I'm not going to pay for gas every month. And so you would be able to afford quite a bit more, and it would incentivize and push people back towards transit or push people back towards where all the services and the jobs are located at. It was done for a short period of time in the mid 2000s. And then, of course, we had the financial crisis and we threw out all the good ideas with all the bad ones. But that's one I'd like to see back.
And then it didn't work because everybody had to pay mortgage.
Yeah. Everybody's paying more.
And the mortgage insurance, right?
Yeah,
like
mortgage
now
insurance.
they're like, oh, we're so worried.
Yeah.
I had never heard that, so that's
So
fascinating.
king for the day?
Yeah.
You're in?
100%. I never
Never
did.
heard that.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, I got 3 votes.
I'm just going to tell you, I have an entire page.
Oh.
If I were, if I got the crown, right? I will not read the whole thing to you, but this was very fun. And it actually made me feel really great. So thanks for that suggestion. Because I was like, sometimes you don't feel like you have any power, right? To make the things happen you want. So I'll just tell you, if Habitat for Humanity of Summit and Wasatch counties held the crown for a day, our royal decree would focus on bridging the widening gap between the missing middle and the exorbitantly high cost of living in our mountain community, because we want more people to be able to afford to live here who can work here too. I mean, it is truly a whole page of all the things that could happen. I could have many.
You're the queen. You could take as much time as you want.
I mean, I will just say, that I will just add, unlocking land for permanent affordability would be really great. And it just somehow seems to, land is, I know it's money and I know it is meaningful to people, but if there's some way we could really get more land that could be focused for it and zoning could make it work, that would be great. But I would also ask for direct funding for this housing. And so the decree would be shift significant state and local tax directly to affordable housing construction funds. And happens in a lot of states, really directly through all kinds of methods, and it doesn't really happen in Utah. There is a homeless direct, way that money goes to the homeless stuff. And what happens if we don't put people in permanent housing and homeownership? Then we just have more homeless people because there's only so much being built.
We need to start assisting people upstream before they become homeless and address it there through, rental assistance and stuff like that to prevent them from being evicted in the first place.
Yeah.
Once they become homeless, they're, I think, 6 or 7 times more expensive to take care of than if you would have just caught them upstream.
Stabilized it at that point. Yeah. So there is, I'm not picking on homelessness because it is very important. And I worked in that, for the state in that industry for a long time. And I believe in that, but I'm just like, what about affordable housing? Right? What about that? This doesn't quite happen. And then the vision of that would be, instead of families spending over 30, and really it's higher than that. I don't talk to anybody who's looking for help that is, unless they're maybe luckily got into an affordable rental unit that is paying 30%. I mean, we're looking at people paying 50 or 60% of their income on rent. These funds would stabilize the housing supply so children can grow up in a stable, affordable place to live. So that is my crown for the day wish, and there's more. Happy to just keep it and share it.
I would probably have two. I'll do one for transit.
All right.
I mean, Carl and I have talked about this, but it's always a chicken and egg, right? We want to have transit everywhere, but transit needs to have ridership. And so they always say, well, we need the population there before we can get a transit stop there. And I go, I can't put the population there unless I have a transit stop there. So I'd love to see the expansion of transit, regardless of what the population or ridership is. It's going to be really tough financially for a while for transit. But that would allow us to open up a lot more opportunities for more affordable housing located in transit centers. My other one, which is probably the larger one, I would say there's like three things you need for affordable housing. And Shellie, you mentioned probably two of them, which are land and you need money, right? So, but the third is what I think is the most important, which I consider is political will. And that's not political will from elected officials. It's from the local population. It's the NIMBYism that actually kills affordable housing more than anything nowadays. We need to turn more people into YIMBYs. Yes, in my backyard. And we need more people that are going to stand up at meetings and advocate for the need for affordable housing, to beat down the small amount of folks that are there, usually at these public meetings, that don't want it because it's right next to them. We need more people that are going to say, no, I'm okay with it.
Or they have to drive by it.
Yeah.
Drive by it. It might make my commute worse or
So
something.
I guess
right?
if I was king for a day, I would have everybody turn into YIMBYs and come and support affordable housing.
Okay. Well, that is the last of our pre-questions, and Maddie has the next set.
All right. Someone asked, what metrics are used to measure the success of an affordable housing project? Start with us.
I would say, how dare you? I'll say how many people walk when they leave that affordable housing project to work or to groceries or anything like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, you go. You go.
I would say
Don't take mine though, okay?
I'm going to try not to. I would say that, projects, we have goals for projects that not just affordable housing, but that is obviously one of our main reasons. But so to pile on a little bit, we do look at alternative transportation and how much they're actually, using it. What's the usage of parking? Because that only helps us on our next project to show that this actually works when you compare it with transit. I would say obviously affordability, that you want to make sure that you're maintaining affordability. But I would also say safety, and providing safe housing, which can be counter to affordable sometimes because it's expensive to maintain housing. But we want to make sure it's safe and affordable.
Awesome. I will just go to the housing piece of it. The metrics that we look at too are just longevity. Like people get in, they stay in. We hear a lot of people just get in and flip their house, and we have had that stuff historically, right? We've had to really watch and tighten up those things in affordable housing across the country. But really, how long people stay, and then what happens when they can be stabilized like that, right? And there can be all kinds of myths about people not really staying and working in the community or not being a part of the community. And those are metrics in homeownership that we track. We can track we're the mortgage lender on a lot of our homes. And so we stay in touch with our families. We know what's happening. We see their kids grow, and we see what a difference it makes in people's lives.
I would agree. I don't know if it's a metric or not, but I like the storytelling, right? Like to hear the story she told earlier. I don't know if it's a metric, not, but that is why we do it, right? There's so many stories I can tell you in the Park City area of the folks that have gotten into affordable housing and what they're doing now, right? And what important roles they play in the community. And it's because they're allowed to stay here. Elected official right in front of me, right?
Yeah.
That is able to stay in the community because of affordable housing and serve the community, so which is really important.
Thank you. So this next question is going to end with, is this an inevitable spiral? Now I'm going to come back to you. If each affordable housing project creates a larger workforce capacity, doesn't that create a larger capacity for luxury homes and businesses that in turn drives a greater need for affordable housing? So again, is this an inevitable spiral?
Can you read it one more time? No. I should have got all that. Okay.
If we build it, then more people will come, right? And
Oh.
then all of a sudden we're going to need more employees.
Gotcha.
Well, that is happening anyway. Like, we are growing, and the luxury piece of our community is growing, regardless of whether we can get workforce coming here. So I don't think the workforce being in the community or people being able to stay stable is going to cause more high-end stuff to happen. That is happening as we speak, right? So that would be my opinion. That's not really going to cause it. I think it's going to help make solutions for it, right? If we find maybe not as many giant houses will be built if we put some affordable housing on some of that land or require it, right?
I would say a lot of the impacts that we feel right now, and we talk about a lot, traffic, and stuff like that, is a result of a lack of affordable housing. With the amount of, the stats that started this whole presentation off, is, I believe that the majority of our traffic issues are workforce and us as permanent residents, not taking to public transportation enough. I don't think it's visitors. You look at the housing stock. What's Park City at now? 70-something% probably of second
permanent
or vacant. What we consider
50% of the properties are vacant.
Are vacant, which vacant means that they're either a second home or a nightly rental. Those, if they're vacant and they're not being occupied all the time, they're not creating an impact. It's the full-time residents that I'll say this. I think that if we don't do something about affordable housing, it's going to be 10 times worse than any impact that it's going to cause to have the affordable housing here. In both traffic, the economy, I think that our economy is going to start to feel it, especially with you see the increase in workforce here, but wait till East Village is completed, but 2,500 new employees there, we're going to really be struggling to be able to have a workforce that's going to be able to maintain the service level of service that our visitors expect. And so visitation could, maybe go down. And some people say that's great until your taxes go up because you didn't drive enough revenue through sales tax or something like that, or transient room tax that helps to pay for so much of the great services we have here, right? So we need to support and embrace a little bit of this resort community, and the way you have to do is to bring in the workforce and keep it healthy. I rambled there, sorry.
I'm not totally sure. I was still trying to figure out the inevitable part of that question, but I think from a transportation perspective, more affordable housing just statistically make fewer trips. They don't make as many discretionary trips. They don't have as many Amazon trips out to their house on a daily or more frequent basis. And when they do make discretionary trips, they're more likely to walk or take bus or take non-single occupant vehicles. So if you're lining up a new very expensive house and a new affordable house, you're going to take a lot more trips off the system if it's affordable housing, just by its very nature. Was that even the question? Oh, okay.
So we touched on this briefly, but I think it's an interesting question still to sort of hammer home some what we've been talking about. Can you elaborate on the math of affordable housing? So if 30 to 40% of the income should go to housing and transportation, what does it actually look like now in Summit County?
I would start to look at the data guy because he's always up to date on a lot of where things are at. But
can we phone a friend?
Yeah, really.
Maybe we'll let Jeff start with it, and then I can give some.
I'd have to look it up. If you are curious about that, you will find the answer if you Google CHAS, and then put in HUD plus HUD, and it will bring you to a database that will show you the percentage of cost burden households by county. And the way in which they break the data out it will show you that those who earn, say, 30% AMI or less, that they are usually severely cost burdened in all markets. And then those that earn between 30 and 50% AMI are also cost burdened. And then those that are, above the 100% AMI, below that, above 100, then they hardly experience any cost burden at all, because those folks have quite a bit of discretionary income in our market to pay for the housing that they have. But it's an interesting, and then it allows you to also go back and compare year to year. And so you can look at historically to see whether or not we're actually the percentage of 30% AMI, whether or not the cost burden is growing from year to year, or 50 or 80 or 100, and see which areas are getting better and which areas are getting worse.
But also, more people as our AMI goes up in our community, like significantly, right? Higher than maybe the rest of the state, for sure. Then more people are dropping down into that 30% AMI.
There's
right?
also a big difference between renters and the impact of cost burden on renters as opposed to the impact of cost burden on homeowners.
Yeah.
I think if we're sending people to the website, Center for Neighborhood Technology has a great website where they look at the top, I think it's 100 metropolitan areas, and you can look at how much by I think census block group or census tract, how much people spend on their housing, and then you can overlay that with how much people spend on their transportation. And then when you add those up, there's really no way to get out of spending at least half your income on housing plus transportation. You can shift it towards,
I think they estimate 17 to 19% on transportation.
Yeah.
And then on housing, it's, I don't know.
Yeah. So I did Chaz plus HUD, Susquehanna County, 2018 to 2022 income distribution overview. If there's 14, I'm going to round up 14,000 households. 1,400 of them have, what is HAMFI? And it's a different acronym.
That is it's adjusted.
Okay.
Family.
So 10% of the 10% of the households in Summit County are below 30%, according to this data set. So,
or above 30%.
Cost burden.
No, I think you're just looking at the income.
Yeah. Just
so that's
where
just
the
the percentage of people who are.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Severe housing problems.
The household income.
Housing cost or burden. Sorry, I do apologize. Cost burden less than 30%. Is that the number I'm looking for?
we're all burdened though, right?
Right.
I mean, isn't anybody just
cost
get
burden
all the
greater-
money they want?
Cost burden greater than 50% is 1,700 people out of the 14,000.
Wow, so over 10%.
Over 10%. So and that's just housing.
That survey that I did with the employer, we actually figured out how many of their employees were cost burdened, the cost burden portion of it was 27% were cost burdened, meaning they were spending over 30% of their income. There was another 17% that were within 2%, 3% of that. And so as the economy could shift very quickly, you could see that number of 27 could jump up to 35% of them. So,
and plus that percentage that you just talked about, the aggregate, if you look at that, if you scale down the page, it'll have the breakdown of like the 30% AMI group. And you'll see that of that aggregate, a significant share of them have significant cost burden.
It was, because I broke that down. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you again.
I was going to say it aligns with the.
So I've actually, that's what we're looking into now. After my meeting today, I started digging into that, and to Jeff's point, first off, is that I then separated the ones that were cost burdened, out into a separate category there. Over 50% were at that 30% or 40% AMI level. So it definitely a higher proportion is on these lower incomes. But I was actually surprised there was actually a large number that were not house burdened that had considered to leave anyways.
Just because of the length.
They were okay right now, but I think that they were probably on the border and struggling with that.
the cost burden people, those who lived in this community, or
Yes.
the community and they just had a thousand?
The majority, I would say 90% of them lived in this community.
I'm
Question that I'm going to read
fascinated
that
that you got all those responses.
only partially answered tonight.
Incentivized to pay them.
Where the county is in the business of preserving open space with some expense to the taxpayers, what needs to be done to get the county to rezone existing land to expand housing opportunities? We'll just use this as the time to shout out our next event, which will be focused on housing and open space. Does anyone want to answer the
I've been talking a lot. You guys want to take it away?
I'm all like, yeah, I know.
Come back next week.
Yeah.
Next week?
Yeah.
June. Okay.
Come back in June. But I mean, just really quickly, what I say is, it gets back to the zoning stuff that I talked about.
Yeah.
If you zone more efficiently and plan more density in certain areas, what that's going to do is condense that. It doesn't promote that sprawl, right? And when you don't when you prevent sprawl, that leaves more for open space to be preserved, right? So build denser, it'll preserve open space.
Well, and it also goes back to what you said earlier about political will on not just the level you talked about in terms of the community. It's overall. It's, you can go up to the state and they want to build, I don't know, how many homes is it again? But
35,000
starter homes. But you have to have, lots of things have to happen for those things to happen. So with that, Megan is going to come up and we have a call to action. And
Right. Thank you. I'll come over here onto this side.
You need to hold it. So
Okay. Thank you. That was incredible. I'm just really appreciative of that. So thank you all. My name is Megan McKenna. I'm on the Summit County Council. I know a lot of you here, and this is just so exciting to me. This is a topic that is very, very important to me and really why I'm on the Summit County Council. So before I go to the call to action, and this is tied to it, I'll just really briefly tell my story that Jason kind of alluded to there. I grew up here in Summit County, and I'm very grateful to have grown up here. I graduated from Park City High School in 1999. I had a really amazing experience growing up here, so much so that I became a teacher. Because I had so many amazing teachers growing up here. And when I came back to Park City High School as a teacher, it was my dream job. And I realized in that amount of time how the community had changed since 1999. And I couldn't afford to live here. And most of my family by that time had already been displaced due to affordability. I got on the wait list through Park City Municipal. I was on the wait list for 5 years. And then I got into affordable housing. I live in the Park City Heights neighborhood right over there, which is why I could ride my bike here today, which is why I rode the bus to the high school today for work. And it was really in that experience that I realized how impactful affordable housing is and really how important it is to addressing these big solutions, not just for me to get housing, but I taught environmental science. And so now I didn't have to commute. So thinking about my carbon footprint, my quality of life, my sense of community, but also for my community that now I was invested in. I was considering moving down to Salt Lake because I didn't want to commute. And so now I was invested in the school district, my employer. So it was a benefit to them too, to traffic, to all of these things. I saw that connection. I saw the intersection of all of those big challenges that we're faced with in our community. And that's when I started advocating for more affordable housing. And that's actually how I got into my next career, which was at Mountainlands Community Housing Trust. I started advocating for affordable housing in the community. And that's how I got into my next career, actually, by advocating. Someone asked me if I'd be interested in running for Summit County Council, which is not something that I ever considered doing before until I really started going to a lot of meetings and seeing that political will that Jason talked about that is so critical to
making this happen in our communities. So I'm really grateful to be able to share this part tonight. This is so important that we end here with this call to action. 3 things here, and there's a QR code for this is Mountainlands Housing Advocate page. So number 1, take 1 trip on transit or using active transportation. I highly recommend it. If I was your kid, Carl, I would be so excited because I love transit when I go to different communities. I just went to Washington, D.C., and I had so much fun figuring out the metro system.
Can I take you instead of them next time?
I really do actually love transit. I love riding the bus to work. Sign up to be a housing advocate and show your support. You can do that here with this QR code. Bring a friend to the next speaker event. I'm really excited for that one, Maddie. That's a really big one to me. I'm a big fan of open space, and I bet most of you are here. That's one that we hear about in our community surveys all the time, how much we all love open space. But we often think that those 2 things are competing with one another, and really they go hand in hand. That affordable housing, if we do it right, and if it's dense and where the transit is, that's what allows us to protect our open space and allows us to all enjoy it. So I'm really looking forward to that one next week. And I would say I would just add one more on here, and come to your public meetings. Let your elected officials know. Oftentimes, we only hear from people that are opposed to projects or that don't want something. And so it's really powerful when we hear from people that are supportive of a project. So, you could do that in a lot of different ways by online or showing up to a meeting, writing letters to the editor, or talking to your friends, or coming to these great events. So thank you.
Thanks, Fanny.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.